Hi everyone, welcome to another thought-provoking episode of CS Rajiv Bajaj, startup coach and strategic advisor with you in Evolve and Execute with Rajiv Bajaj. As you know, I'm a mentor and founder and a person who is trying to build future-ready organizations. And today's conversation explores a dimension of leadership that is powerful, deeply human, and often underestimated in the world of business performance, that is joy. So we have Nisha Harichandran, who is a joy coach. So leadership is often associated with pressure, decision making, resilience, and outcomes. But I think joy is the essence of performing well. So I think we'll have lots of inputs from Nisha today on how to maintain that joy even in that pressure environment. And, in the midst of scaling teams and navigating uncertainty, driving growth, one essential leadership quality that is left behind is ability to lead from a place of joy and emotional clarity, and of course, inner alignment are the bonuses you get. So joy is not about constant happiness. It is about how we explore our inner self and how we move forward. So, Nisha, thank you and welcome to our this episode. Can you introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah, thank you, Rajiv, for having me here, and to everyone listening. Hello and welcome, and thank you for sharing this time with us. So, yes, Nisha Harichandran, I've worn the t-shirt as well to choose joy, and I think that's what it's all about, a choice that we make. About me, I think when I retrained as a coach a couple of years ago, it was all about choosing a niche. And one thing that I couldn't leave behind was joy, because that just seemed something so fundamental and important. And that's how this whole joy coaching came about. About me, I'm from Malaysia, a lawyer, kind of worked in complex sectors, a career that kind of transcends boundaries, industries. But what kind of really stood through is finding that joy on bridges of change, and how we approach and navigate that.
That's very great, Nisha. When we think about, uh, stress and leadership, I think people they get confused with whether you can actually find joy in your working environment. So let me tell to our viewers, Nisha is currently based in UK, and she's a ICF accredited joy coach, of course, leadership facilitator, and of course, she helps individuals and leaders choose joy, especially in the hard days. So you can think of being a go-to person to her. Nisha, we start with a very simple question which comes to our mind, and that is that leadership is often linked with pressure and responsibility. Where does joy fit into leadership in today's high performance environment?
Rajiv, I mean, just reflecting on that question to start, what are we actually associating leadership with? The words pressure, responsibility. Who are we then counting on as our leaders? Is it people who sit in the C-suites, the CXO teams, or is it each and every one of us who are the leaders of our own lives? So I think before I just dive into the question, I just want the listeners to just take a moment to just reflect in terms of how is it in our everyday language, assumptions, and understanding of who is a leader, and what is leadership is often associated with, kind of comes to mind. And what a start, right? Where does joy fit into all of this, especially in a high performance environment when the only question that comes to mind are targets, or in law firms, your billings, your filings in a company secretarials, what's the target that we are all achieving? That's the key performance indicators or the drivers that motivates all of us. And if I just take a step back, joy to me is that reset button, is the factory setting in all of our inner operating systems that we need to have. It's something that we embed from the moment go. It allows us to be adaptable, to have that sense of psychological flexibility, to manage both the storms and the sunshines as they come along in the everyday. Because not every day in the leadership setting is a high performance kind of conversation. We're not, Formula One race car drivers that at
Yeah,
that moment
absolutely.
go all the time. So to me, that becomes that outlet in terms of how do you wish to navigate this journey of you as you take it step by step. What are the resources then available to you during that particular environment? How do you best support yourself and the teams that you are in charge with?
Oh, that's a great answer. Nisha, many founders and CXOs, they lead under constant stress because something or the other keeps hitting them, if not some missile at their backyard. So, how can they begin embedding joy without feeling that they are compromising seriousness or ambition? And sometimes, your teams don't expect you to smile too much or something. So, how do you handle this in this complex world?
Rajiv, when I first started introducing myself as a joy coach, I was often confronted with, oh, you start making people feel happy. Great. But it's not about that. It's about knowing how to lead through all these different situations, how to bounce back, how to continuously pick yourself up. And in response to this, I think it comes to the process, the how in the way that we actually show up, because we can't shy away stress. Stress also fuels us in different ways, but we could learn to cope better during these difficult times or during these challenging times. And when we embed joy at the heart of it, at our process, it helps us to forecast the anticipation, the needs of the team, the needs of ourselves during this particular situation, how to better guide and support the team through all of that. So it's not something that we only respond to in a time of crisis or when it's taken away from us that we start appreciating it, but we build that into the ground up. It just gives us different avenues to kind of relate to and also to take recourse from as well.
Very nice. Both of us are from legal fraternity. I was looking at a series which was there on Netflix where a judge, smiles at a advocate and people say that you are connected with the advocates and things like that. So these kind of challenges keep coming. So from your coaching experience, what are the early signs that a leader has become disconnected from joy?
This is really a tough one. And when I ask these questions with clients, it's just like how I let out that exhale. It's a moment that shows up.
Yeah.
It's like I was focused so much on kind of racing ahead that I forgot to have fun. And let me tell you, joy is really not about having a smile 24/7 or, this kind of toxic positivity or a cheerleader that goes on rooting for you all the time. It is that and more. It is about choices. And it's a hard and lonely road at times because it's inviting you to make those difficult decisions on a path when people feel it's easier to conform to what's going on in the mainstream. And here you're choosing to be different, you're choosing to be kinder, to be gentler, you're choosing to be real, to give yourself some feedback, you're choosing to be open. And it's a sense of discipline that, you need to keep committing to day in, day out. And it's not a one-time choice. It's something that keeps meeting you in everyday moments. So it's that constant practice of showing up. And it's not that if we made this choice once, it goes on forever, but
Yeah.
it's that daily choice. I see you nodding away there, Rajiv, as I'm sharing this.
I know, I know. because I can relate to it. But how
Yeah.
does this emotional state of leader influence team culture, morale, and performance? Because I think that's the key, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess on a leaders, like, we often equate them as the captains of the ship. And if they're steering forward into uncharted waters, taking the business to new scale, to new heights, to new visions, they haven't quite been there yet. But they are painting you this picture that it is possible. What is possible if you choose to believe in something? And how can they go about creating that together, that collective will, and kind of taking people along? But if the leader shows fear and that inability to apprehend what's out there or panic in the face of a challenge, it's kind of passing on all the way down. So we kind of look to the leader as that role model who has different skill sets to be able to navigate through again the storms and the sunshine and treat them equally alike, and also guide the team and point them towards, where can you get shelter, how can you go about it, maybe even designing it with the team so that there is that collective co-creation in terms of what comes about in solution. So I guess that emotional state of a leader, and also showing how open they are in situations because you don't have to know it all.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that authenticity that comes out in a leader that's showing, well, it is hard, but being really candid and having those open conversations is
yeah.
important to influence the morale of the team and also inspire performance because they are looking to see different things together.
That's the good one. So, can joy become a measurable leadership advantage in terms of productivity, innovation, and retention?
Absolutely. When I was looking at a recent Harvard Business Review article, and to quote them, it says, employee joy is actually a performance engine. And in this study, they had kind of invested the similar tools that we would use to measure a customer success journey. You know how we kind of go about understanding our ideal customer, what makes the journey more meaningful for them throughout their stay with us and product usage, etc. Taking all of that analysis tools to understand our own people. It's easy to say that people are our greatest assets, but how are we really taking the time to understand them? What inspires them? What motivates them? And what support do they actually need? And we have NPS scores, we have different surveys rolling out in organizations, but what are they truly measuring? We have our performance appraisals, we have smart goals that we set, but they become just a measure rather than a token of what is truly meaningful for the individual concerned as they are part of that journey. So I think there are many different ways we can use joy as a measure of leadership. And I think there are published studies that also show that employee joy, relates to higher performing individuals. They're more invested in terms of what they do. They see their value. They feel seen, heard, and yeah, definitely that when you have all of that good components cooking
I agree. I
within
agree.
within
I
a
agree.
person, performance is, just an outcome that we are waiting to measure.
Absolutely, absolutely. People look upon leaders, and of course, when they are looking positive, then a lot of positivity flows in the
Yeah.
team as well. So, how can leaders create emotionally safe workplaces where people feel energized rather than exhausted by using these tricks of the trade you have?
It's those micro moments, finding those micro moments in terms of how they can support their team members in order to find joy, in order to replenish. So if you think of joy as this power source that you kind of keep tapping into, and joy stems from the underlying emotion of love, which requires safety and connection. When we think of safety, creating those psychological creating that psychological safety in terms of a working culture, that sense of safety to be able to bring our whole selves to the organization, to feel that we truly belong, and safety in terms of the language that we use, not to be clumsy in terms of our choices, but to be just a little bit more thoughtful or considerate in terms of what is it that we are truly asking somebody when we ask them how they are. We go away with answers like, I'm fine, it's okay. But are we truly fine? Is everything really okay? So, something to share here is like an internal weather checking, using words that resemble the weather or flavor profile or spices to kind of just describe how somebody is feeling, is creating that comfort and that sense of safety that I can share as much or as little as I want to describe a particular situation, while also giving the leader a pulse check in terms of what truly is going on and what could they do to kind of support the team member in the question. And I think it's not a one time fix all, but something that you need to keep putting into practice so that everybody feels comfortable going about it the same way.
I agree. I was heading manufacturing companies, HR, and one thing which a guy who came to train us on this fire safety was that in case of anything which is critical, which happens, you have to maintain your, you don't have to panic or something like that. So, in times of crisis, uncertainty, or failure, how can leaders still hold space for hope and joy?
It's that presence before panic. Crisis will happen one form or another. There's no denying that. Tough times happen, challenges happen. But if a leader is truly present in terms of how they are emotionally, physically, mentally, and also to the tune of what's kind of going on within their inner environment, as in the organization, and also outside, you then have access to a wider set of resources in terms of how to respond to the situation. So you're responding rather than reacting in that mode. And I think seeing a leader behave that way kind of instills a lot of hope already with the team members that are looking, and to also signal the observers outside who are watching how is this leader responding in terms of this moment. So I think that's
Right, right, absolutely. So, what daily practices or rituals, can founders or leaders adopt to lead with greater emotional balance and presence?
first. I think it's something like an intention setting, like what are you there for? Just to tune in, just to tune in. You can come back to your breath, but just to tune in to that very moment. And I think when you tune in, you start staying present in terms of what really is going on. So one is intention setting. And you can start off simply by doing it before meetings, team check-ins, etc. What's really your intention in this moment? And when you start planting those seeds, like a GPS program, it keeps redirecting you to find that as you go along. So if you start putting in joy as one of those intentions that you would like out of the group, I think that would be really nice. Second thing is a group agreement. And I think as a leader, holding space for the team, holding space for themselves, it's like what kind of agreements are we setting with each other today or for this particular project? And it's bringing in the collective will in terms of how are we all going to show up, because we're each carrying each other through this. It's not the leader's journey alone. And
Yeah,
it's quite unfair to put all of it on the leader in terms of their responsibility. And I think comes back to my first point about
yeah,
we are all
yeah.
leaders in our own right. So a collective agreement as we begin something. And that then gives you a measure in terms of what is it that we are checking in. We know the performance stuff needs to happen, but how else are we kind of bringing this together as a team? And
Right.
thirdly, I'd say gratitude. Sorry if I may.
Yeah,
Thirdly, I think is gratitude. It's just fundamental in terms of how it helps you reframe from any particular situation to also help you see that silver lining. And I think to your earlier point in terms of crisis as well, I think having the sense of gratitude lens, you start appreciating what's really going well and then what could be better and helps you bounce back to see that you're, stronger as you have managed to navigate this crisis more smoothly.
perfect. How does joy-driven leadership impact decision making and conflict resolution? We talked about it, but if you can throw some examples for our viewers to understand better.
It's in this co-creation and design of things, and there's a Maya Angelou quote that I absolutely love, and she says, people may forget what you said or what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I think that really comes down to that. It's psychological safety over directives. We don't necessarily remember all the details that we put into the spreadsheet, but we remember a leader who kind of guided us through a difficult time or supported us in a team meeting where we felt completely out of place. It's not something that we find in the handbook. It's in those everyday moments of truth. How are we delivering the news? Good, bad, not so great. How are we dealing with the mistakes in terms of, when a team member makes a mistake? How are we going about it? How are we sharing appreciation? Do we reserve that only for our annual appraisals? Or
Yeah,
do we give positive feedback every now and then? And do we invite that for ourselves? And all these things are not just awareness days. There are many awareness days nowadays, and there is a whole campaign initiatives kind of built around. But it's in those everyday moments that these rituals are kind of built in and cut and kind of just cultivated. And all of that then binds into the culture and the culture of joy that's created.
absolutely. I fully agree. So, if a founder wants to build a culture where performance and well-being coexist, what three principles should they never compromise on?
I love the question. What are three principles? And the first thing that comes to mind is a people first approach. When you recognize that everybody is equal, we all want the same things. We all want to live with ease. We want safety. We want to have joy. And if we kind of keep that at the core, irrespective of the titles or the background qualifications that we all come from, I think we'll be able to design better. And that leads me to the second point, which is joy and performance can coexist. We can learn to manage those stress levels, etc. They happen. It's not that by embedding joy, we are negating stress. It'd be very naive to think that way, but they can
Yeah,
coexist. We can keep finding and doing better and creating these moments for us because it comes down to our daily choices. And thirdly, process before outcomes. And that way we support by managing the anxiety, the stress of, kind of just racing for the outcome. We don't short circuit things as we go along only to achieve the outcome, but
yeah,
you're strengthening the foundations and the roots by examining the process. And by that, we are also looking not just in our own playbook, but looking all around us and inviting any other way to kind of keep measuring this to take this forward. So, and if I may, I'll offer another bonus, a fourth one for
yeah,
everyone, which is to remain present first before panicking. It's
yeah.
only natural to just rush straight to the worst possible outcome that would happen. But what about the best or a better outcome from all of this? And also to
Great.
stay present. I think it's something that I'd like to offer.
I love your comment about this short circuiting. Many people do that in panic. So, now we have come to the interesting part of our conversation, which is a rapid fire question round,
Ooh,
where you can just give quick answers to my quick questions. Joy or discipline?
joy anytime.
Great. Performance or peace?
Peace. And I think this has come with a level of maturity on my part. So
You
peace.
can elaborate that a bit if you want.
Of course, I think in my initial career years was always performance and lived an afterlife outside of work in order to do all the things that brought me joy. But over time, managed to find that balance, and I think there's no compromise to having your peace of mind.
Absolutely. And peace actually keeps you calm, and that itself gives you power of leadership. So emotional intelligence or strategic thinking?
Emotional intelligence. And I think this goes back to that approach about seeing people first. Your EQ needs to be really high because you
Yeah,
can develop strategic thinking and do the
yeah,
helicopter view, etc. And you need
uh,
to see people beyond deliverables. And that's how you bring that collective will to gather them forward in terms of anything else. So I think
yeah.
definitely emotional intelligence.
I remember that movie of Chak De India, Shah Rukh
Yes,
Khan. The way the coach connected with the team members, he made them win the World Cup.
yeah,
So there are many such examples which are around us. Pressure or presence?
presence. Presence first. Because presence helps you remember that you have navigated these pressures before. Presence helps you and gives you that clarity of mind, that calmness, that composure, that alignment that you so need to seek in that particular time to know where to draw your strengths, where to seek support, how to navigate. So definitely presence. And just in terms of how to go about doing things. So coming back
Yeah.
to this whole psychological flexibility reminds me of, I think there's often an analogy to a bamboo. You
Hmm.
know how to adapt. You know, you're not just standing firm despite if it's a windy, you know how to bend,
Yep.
you know how to manage
Yeah.
the terrain and go across. But in order to do that, you got to stay present, just tune
Absolutely.
in to what's happening around you.
Great. Culture or compensation?
Oh, this is an interesting one. I'd say culture. In
Hmm.
the initial run, I think is compensation. I think that's a very attractive factor that takes us there. I've been there myself, but it is the culture that is what keeps you.
Yeah.
Culture is what allows you to be more invested in terms of what you do. And when we are spending so much of our time at the workplace, even if we are working on our own, just the whole culture in terms of how we are showing up, how we are leading, how we are managing team members, and how we are supported as well, I think says a lot. And yeah, that really
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
yeah,
There was always a debate whether culture is important or strategy is important, but I believe, there are different views, but yes, culture, of course, matters a lot. Founder's mindset or team mindset?
this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because on the one hand, I'm inclined to both actually, because it
Yes.
really depends which side of the coin you are. And I think one of your earlier questions was about, a leader leading in times of crisis, etc.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, taking that ship captain, they have to think how to go about first and believe in that vision themselves. So almost that founder mindset kind of comes
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
But then again, captain can't be sailing on their own.
Yeah.
So you got to bring in the team as well. And I guess even if you're working for yourself or you could be a startup and you are your team. So as much as the founder mindset kind of leads you in terms of your entrepreneurial thinking, you are wearing multiple hats. You're doing your
Yeah.
marketing, you're doing your finance planning, etc. So you've also got to take that team position in terms of how to better support yourself for the longevity of your business and
Yeah.
yourself. So in that sense, I think I'll go with team mindset. But great one, Rajiv.
Listening or leading?
Listening,
Yeah.
listening, and not just listening to respond, but just listening, plain and simple. I think is super important. And then as a trained coach now, there's so many dimensions in terms of how you're really listening, going beyond the body language to just really being so observant. And it's such a gift. It's such a gift. We often listen to just respond in terms of what is it that we want or,
Yeah.
or tune in. And also, what are we really listening to? We get carried away by a person's emotions or their tone of voice as they're expressing things, and the message gets really diluted. So when you listen, it's a gift, and staying present, it really helps you with what to do. It helps you to stay present. It helps you as a leader in terms of the actions that you need to take, and get that real pulse check really.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
listen and listen well.
Listen. Many field leaders are very bad listeners, so that is the reason of their failure. Anyway, ambition or alignment?
Alignment. Alignment. Ambition's great, but it can be misaligned in different ways, and I've been through that. So when you're aligned, then all parts of you are getting attention. One is not over compromised or overcompensated in the face of ambition. And I think there's a lovely exercise called the Wheel of Life that one
Yeah.
can take to
Mhm.
plot where you are in terms of different spheres. And it's hardly you see a nice wheel that, is a full circle.
Mm.
Is often quite lopsided in different ways. But when you're truly aligned, I think all parts of you are nourished and sustained. And I think that supports you in terms of all the actions that you take.
Great. Resilience or optimism?
Resilience, because resilience is what takes you forward. Resilience is what helps you bounce back. Resilience enables you to stay flexible and adaptable and present. Optimism is great. It's nice, and I think it's good to have that outlook. But resilience also helps you bring it back to reality by taking a perspective of all other dimensions that come across. And as a leader, you're not going to be pleasing everybody.
Yeah.
You're going to be met with some really difficult questions, challenges, and those everyday moments that we spoke about that helps build culture. You're going to be faced with all of that and more. So, kind of having this quality to be resilient in the face of everything that comes about, it just helps you become stronger. And it also helps you to be more human, to
Yeah.
know that you can't do it all and solve it all in a record time, but it allows you to have more empathy for yourself because we are
Yeah.
holding so much space for everybody else, but also giving yourself that time and space to reflect in terms of what's going on.
Last one leadership quality every founder must develop.
I was going to say joy, but thinking about it more about
Yeah.
the sense of neutrality and being this observer, it's hard to stay neutral because you can be so persuaded in terms of what's going on. And when you stay neutral, you're also more open to
Yeah.
what's happening around you, within you, as you are changing and evolving. And I think that helps you, again, adapt and grow as a leader. So I'd say that.
Great. So today's conversation brings forward this important truth. Leadership is not only about strategy, scale, and execution, it is also about emotional energy leaders bring in every room, every decision, in every relationship. So joy is not a soft concept, it's a force multiplier. It strengthens presence, builds trust, enhances resilience, and of course creates cultures where people perform to their best. So thank you so much, Nisha, for bringing in lots of innovative inputs for us. And of course, I'm sure this conversation is going to help our leaders build trust and enhance their resilience and create cultures where people perform to their best. And of course, leaders who embed joy at the heart and the leadership style, they don't just build successful companies, they build organization people want to belong to. So, Nisha, any last inputs for our viewers on whatever conversation we had today?
First of all, thank you, Rajiv, again for having me, and to all the listeners, to everybody out there. Keep choosing joy because it's the journey of you. So keep choosing it.
Great. Thank you, Nisha, for sharing this profound insight on how joy can transform leadership from a role of pressure into a space of purpose and human connection. To our listeners, leadership begin within. So the way you lead yourself shapes the way you lead others. So if today's conversation resonates with you, do share it with founders, leaders, and professionals who are building teams and cultures for the future. This is CS Rajiv Bajaj signing off with Evolve and Execute, and we'll come back with another episode with another leader who wish to spread joy and information to all of you. So let's build organizations where ambition meets alignment and leadership is rooted in joy. Thank you so much, Nisha, for sparing your time. And I believe this is middle of the day for you in UK. So have a bright evening. Thanks a lot.